Hello, Ari. Can you hear me?
Unmute. Yes, now I can hear you. How you going?
Fantastic. Very good. We're going to be starting in about 10 minutes.
Yes. How are things in Jackson Hole, Wyoming?
Things are phenomenally well over here. It's a beautiful place. It's probably the most beautiful place on earth. We have small Jewish community, but a growing one. And we are very honored to have you with us this evening. Very special. Yeah, we are in the midst of a very, very busy summer. We have really just thousands upon thousands of Jewish people that have come through by us throughout the summer, many visitors. And then we have a small local community and then a small community of people who own second homes here but don't live here full time. So that's sort of the makeup of our community. It's an interesting place. A great, beautiful place on planet Earth.
Sounds a bit like Surfer's Paradise.
Say again?
Sounds a bit like a place I used to live in, Surfer's Paradise for almost 3 years. We were there in Australia for nearly 3 years doing shlichut. I went to Australia to do some work for Rafael. No, losing you. Can't hear you. You're muted, Rabbi.
Yeah, I'm talking to my wife who's sitting next to me.
Oh, that's okay.
We're going to be ready in about 7 minutes to get started.
Sure, no worries. Tell me, Rabbi, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Miami Beach. I've been here in Jackson Hole since 2007. And
you the first shliach there?
Say again?
Were you the first shliach there, or someone who preceded you?
Full-time shliach here. Chabad has been visiting the state of Wyoming since as early as '56. So this is a place that Chabad had on the map for a very long time, and now since 2007 it's full-time. Hi, Linda. We're going to be starting in about 6 minutes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Hi, Judy. Nice to see you.
Unmute. Hello, long time. How are you? Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Yes, it has been a little while. Great to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too. And thank you for doing these lectures, meetings, and for including me.
Absolutely. So important to bring people together for these types of gatherings. It's wonderful to see you.
And to learn important stuff. This sounds very interesting.
Absolutely. Vitally important.
Will be.
We will be starting here shortly in about 4 minutes. Nice to see everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Hello, Steve. Hi, Gal. I see your face, but it's still.
Hey, Rabbi. I don't hear you.
I said, hi, Craig. How are you?
There
Nice
you
to
are.
see you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. How you doing?
Good, very well. Are you flying as we're speaking?
No, not today.
Thank you.
I'm working on the.
Thank you for not giving me
I'm
a heart attack while we're
working
in the
on the
midst of
airplane.
speaking. Last time you were flying, I was freaked out.
I do it all the time.
I thought we would, let's just not say what I thought.
Hello. You must not have a good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Any job gets boring after a while, and you need some brain candy things to think about. So it's always good.
Yeah, just not at our freaked out expense watching you fly above Oklahoma and wondering if you're going to land safe or sound.
Right. Yeah. Well, right now I'm in Illinois. Just got done here. I'm headed to South
Glad you're
Dakota
here with
tomorrow.
us.
So, yeah.
We will be starting in 2 minutes.
Do you read chats on this Zoom call, Rabbi?
Absolutely, of course.
Thank you.
Yes. Judy will have to connect after this talk is over.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Find me a place to stay and I'll come visit.
Sounds great.
It's outrageously crowded and everything's just booming. So
It has its ups and its downs, its benefits and its challenges.
well, I hope it's been profitable and productive. Productive is a better word for you. Lots of people probably in town.
Yeah, it's been very good for us. Okay, we are going to get started. Hello and welcome, and thank you all so much for being here on this beautiful Jackson Hole evening, where we have come together to learn about Israel's Iron Dome system with our guest of honor, Ari Sacher. It is a wonderful pleasure to see so many of you here with us for this gathering, and it is a pleasure to welcome each and every one of you. My name is Rabbi Zalman Mendelson, for those of you who don't know me, and I serve together with my wife, Razy, as the co-director of the Chabad Jewish Center of Wyoming for the past 14 years, bringing the joys, wisdom, and beauty of Yiddishkeit and Jewish ideas and Jewish values and Torah mitzvahs to our community in Jackson and throughout the state of Wyoming. Tonight, we are gathered for one purpose only: to learn from Ari about Israel's great achievements in the field of missile defense. And it is very, very special for us to have Ari here with us to talk to us all about the Iron Dome system from an insider's perspective. The schedule for this evening will be that Ari will speak for approximately 45 minutes, followed by Q&A. If our participant levels remain below 20 or 25, we will open up the Q&A for public discussion. Otherwise, you're welcome to send in to the chat any questions that you have, and we will pose those questions to Ari to keep things orderly if the participation level grows much more than that. We are also live on Facebook currently, so we will keep an eye on questions that are coming in from there as well. As you know, Ari, who is joining us all the way from Israel, is a rocket scientist. He has briefed nearly half of the US Congress on Israeli missile defense, including a briefing on Capitol Hill at the invitation of the House Majority Leader and the Israeli ambassador. Ari is a highly sought after speaker at all types of Israel events, enabling even the layman to understand the rocket science. And his speaking events are regularly sold out. Ari moved to Israel and made Aliyah from the US in 1982. He studied at Yeshivat Kerem B'Yavne and then spent 7 years at the Technion. He lives in Moreshet in the Western Galilee, along with his wife and 8 children. Please put your hands together for a warm Wyoming welcome to Ari Sacher.
Hi, thank you very, very much, Rabbi. Good to be here, considering that here is simultaneously Wyoming and my living room in Moreshet in Israel. Let me jump right in. First of all, I just want to tell the Rabbi one thing, that being on Zoom for you guys does not remove the requirement, does not discharge your requirement of having me speak in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So that's something that's going to happen in the future in Mirza. I guess in the beginning, my life changed about 10 years ago, totally drastically upside down, changed in May of 2011. There was a large contingent of AIPAC higher-ups who came to Rafael, my company, AIPAC, America's Republic Affairs Committee, or Voice on Capitol Hill, yada, yada, yada. And because the talk took place late in the evening, and because none of my superiors were available to join me at the said talk, I allowed myself to be a bit less formal than I would have been otherwise. And counterintuitively, informal actually struck a chord with AIPAC. And from that moment on, I became above and beyond my engineering duties. I assumed the role of the mouthpiece for Iron Dome. And AIPAC took me all over the place. And I must have briefed 500 congressmen, 3 briefings on Capitol Hill, television, and all that stuff. And the nice thing is that we were rewarded for the hard work. And the United States has given to date more than $1.5 billion supporting Iron Dome. And as you might expect, $1.5 billion is more than double my salary. And the question is, not to denigrate anyone, but every so often your US congressman might not be the sharpest tool in the shed. And definitely is not a rocket scientist. So how do you go about explaining rocket science, interception of missiles, in a way that Joe Congressman can understand, in a way that it will resonate? And I typically begin my discussion with congressmen by going back in time to the summer of 2006. Summer of 2006 has been scientifically proven to be the worst summer in the history of mankind. Summer of 2020 and to a certain extent 2021 in Israel have given it a run for its money with the pandemic, but summer 2006 was really lousy. Summer 2006, for the course of 6 weeks, we were pelted by rockets from southern Lebanon, from our friends and neighbors in the Hezbollah. There were 55 Israelis that were killed, 200 odd injured, billions of dollars of damages. We were in bomb shelters between 9 and 10 times a day. And we realized that we had a new threat. The state of Israel was a threat of high volume rocket fire on our urban areas. And after the war was over, in order to counter this threat, the Minister of Defense did what Israelis would typically do in this situation. He called a meeting, and in that meeting in Tel Aviv, the Ministry of Defense was attended by anybody who was anybody in the industry. There was the Minister of Defense, there were various other ministers, there were representatives of all of the various arms of the Army, Navy, Air Force, air defenders, and of course the defense contractors were there. We sat in the back of the room where we were prohibited from having food and drink, but we're used to that sort of thing, being the defense industry that we are. And the Minister of Defense stands up in front of the podium and says, all right, we need everyone to brainstorm here. Who has ideas of how to save the state of Israel from the new threat of high volume rocket fire on our urban areas? And as soon as he asked the question, an old cantankerous rocket scientist who works at Rafael, up went his finger, and the Minister of Defense looks at this scientist with such complete and utter disdain. He says, oh, you old cantankerous rocket scientist from Rafael, you're going to tell me about this system that you've been working on called Iron Dome, except then it wasn't called Iron Dome, it was called Sunfish, and Hebrew Doug Shimish, and we changed the name for reasons that I will get into. You're going to tell me about this Sunfish of yours with a bullet, hitting a bullet. Let me tell you something, Mr. Doctor, old cantankerous rocket scientist. Here in the 21st century, we don't do bullets. Case in point, every single Star Wars movie that has been or had been produced to date, that were only about 30, in none of those Star Wars movies is there one bullet. How do they shoot things in Star Wars? They use lasers. Well, they use lasers in Star Wars. We want to use lasers here too. And the truth be told, that we in the defense industry love our boys' toys. The shinier the boys' toy, the happier we are. And physically speaking, there is nothing shinier than a laser. But there's a problem, because the Minister of Defense could not stand up in front of local media and say, oh, thank you very much, we've decided to protect the state of Israel from high volume rocket fire using lasers because they're cool. It doesn't cut the mustard, even in Israel. But someone in the studio audience had this amazing idea. He said, look, you Dr. Cantankerous rocket scientist, every time you fire off one of your interceptors, $100,000. Here's another bad boy coming. $100,000. But every time we fire off our laser, me, $1.99. Here's another bad boy coming. Me, $1.99. There are no bad boys coming, but just because I feel like it, I'm going to hit that laser button. Meep, 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 $12. Oh, this is lovely. Minister of Defense was so happy, because not only did a laser, was it cool, but it also was inexpensive. And cool and inexpensive are two critical ingredients of any military system, especially in Israel. And the meeting would have been over very, very early, leaving us rocket scientists time to do things that we Israelis typically do when we have free time, create startup companies or eat falafel, I don't know. And then everybody said, this is wonderful. And they all stand up and pump their fists in the air. We're going to build a laser. We're going to build a laser. Until the old cantankerous rocket scientist from Rafael banged his hand down on a podium, which he had somehow gotten his hand on. And he said, wait, because you have forgotten something. What had we forgotten? And it was true. We had forgotten something. We had forgotten about an Israeli neurosis, a psychosis of Freudian proportions. We call it Israel-America envy. America envy. Anything that the United States does as far as Israel is concerned is given to Moses on Sinai. If it's good enough for the Americans, it's good enough for the Israelis. It's good enough for the red, white, and blue. It's certainly good enough for the white and blue. And at this particular time, in 2007, the United States, we still, American citizen that I am, we still had troops in the Middle East and Afghanistan and in Iraq. And these troops were still sustaining rocket fire from but we got to call them insurgents now. They used to be terrorists. Anyway, they were sustaining rocket fire from the insurgents, and they were sustaining casualties. And to address the threat of rocket fire on our forward operating bases in Baghdad, the United States Army brought to the front the best weapon system in the entire universe. Now, how can I say something like that? I can say something like that simply by the name of the system. Ari Sacher and myself, I have been in the field of missile development for almost 30 years. October, 30 years. And 30 years in the industry has taught me something very, very important. It has taught me that the more, as I call it, Ari Sacher's rule of defense system names, the more macho the name of the system, the more testosterone infused the name of a system, the better that system works. You do not want to face high volume rocket fire with a system called sunfish. Oh, they're shooting rockets at us. Bring more sunfish. We need more fish. No, but you do want to use a system with the name of that system that the American Army brought. The name of this system was called Vulcan Phalanx. Just saying the name Vulcan Phalanx, you could feel the hormones entering the bloodstream. I could tell my children, you can sleep tight tonight because a Vulcan Phalanx is protecting you. Now, what is Vulcan Phalanx? At the end of the day, all Vulcan Phalanx is a cannon. Now, when I am briefing U.S. Congressmen and I say the word cannon, this is potentially the first word in my briefing that he has heard before. And it resonates. Cha-ching, he says, say no more. I know what a cannon is. I know what a cannon is. In fact, I recently saw a cannon on a trip that we took to Baltimore, Maryland. We went to see old Fort McHenry. And in Fort McHenry, there was a large cannon, a very large black cannon. And there was a big pile of black cannonballs by the floor in front of the cannon, and the operator of the cannon was wearing a very silly looking red suit and a tall black furry hat. Don't know what you call that, Strymel, I don't know. And then he picked up the cannonball and he put it in the cannon, and he took a very large stick, and to use the rocket science jargon, he stuck the cannonball into the cannon, and his boss said, "Fire one, Ridley." That's not Vulcan Phalanx. Vulcan Phalanx is a 21st century science fiction uber cannon. Vulcan Phalanx, oh my goodness gracious, before I hit Vulcan Phalanx, I didn't even tell you about why the laser doesn't work. I can't believe it. What was the matter with the laser? Why didn't we go for the laser? The reason we didn't go for the laser is because lasers don't work in the rain. Let me explain. What do you mean lasers don't work in the rain? Here, I need a bit of audience participation here. How many folks out there have laser pointers? I mean, laser pointers. I'm looking at you guys. By the way, thank you very much for showing your face. Typically, that doesn't happen. Laser pointer. Okay, I got a laser pointer too. And sometimes at night, we get bored and we shine our laser pointer out the window, maybe at a passing target. I'm not saying this is a good idea. Neither am I saying this is legal. But what I am saying is that it has been known to happen, specifically in my house. There are targets that pass by my house that have known to have suffered the slings and arrows of Ari Sacher's laser. Now, if you shoot a laser at a passing target, if you look at the end of the laser, you will see a red dot about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. I personally prefer the green laser cannons to get much more range. But if you look at your target, you will see a red dot approximately the same diameter, because laser light doesn't diverge. You can even shine a laser pointer at the moon, and if you have the proper equipment, you can see it bouncing off the moon. And in between the laser and your target, depending on the amount of dust in the air on that particular evening, you may or may not see the outline of a beam. But if it's raining that night, Christmas lights, it's beautiful. The raindrops absorb the laser light and they shimmer like rubies, or in my case, like like emeralds. And then the entire beam there's an aura of light that surrounds it. It's a halo. It looks almost like a religious experience. But what's the problem here? The problem here is, how does a laser work? A laser works by taking large amounts of energy from point A, which is the laser, and taking it to point B, the incoming. You want to train that laser beam on the incoming long enough for it to heat up, blow up. You want to deep fry the bad boy. But if we are wasting all of our energy creating Christmas lights, then we may not have sufficient residual energy left over to deep fry the bad boy, such that if we can convince our friends and neighbors to hold their rocket fire on those rainy evenings, then a laser is a potential solution. Unfortunately, here we are 30 years since the handshake on the White House lawn, and for some reason, our neighbors still fire rockets at us even when it's raining, such that we threw the laser out the window. Well, we threw the laser out the window. That's when we wanted to make the Iron Dome, but we couldn't make the Iron Dome because we had forgotten about America Envy and Vulcan Phalanx. Okay, fine, no laser. We're going to build Vulcan Phalanx. What's Vulcan Phalanx? Vulcan Phalanx is the cannon, but it's a 21st century science fiction uber cannon. Now, Vulcan Phalanx, it vomits out 75 rounds a second. Each of these rounds is encased in depleted uranium or tungsten, some of the heaviest substances known to man. When the casing explodes, these rounds turn into depleted uranium knives, which you will agree is an excellent name for a rock group. And then each one of these these shells has a computerized fuse, which enables the shell to explode at the moment in time in space where it will perform the optimum amount of damage. And here's what Vulcan Phalanx looks like. It's truly a sight to behold. I urge you to look it up on YouTube. But as I have found, I must tell the congressman, I might have to tell you guys too, you spell phalanx with a PH. You don't spell it with an F. No, you spell it with a PH. I did not know that. Well, sir, let me continue. Vulcan Phalanx, it looks sort of like a cannon. It's like this tall thing, and it's got a thing sticking out, and it has a dome on top. Looks a bit like R2-D2. Guess who likes Star Wars? And it aims where it's got to go, and then it erupts in cannon fire. This is exactly what it sounds like this, 75 rounds a second, all going up in the air, and then they all start exploding. And then you have this big, huge cloud of depleted uranium knives flying at supersonic speeds. And then into that cloud comes the incoming, where it is torn to shreds. And this is indeed what happens nearly 25% of the time. Now, it's not a big number. There's a problem. You see, the problem isn't only that Vulcan Phalanx don't work too good. There's another problem. Engineers out there in the audience are saying 25%, that's not really good performance, is it? No, it's not. But there's another problem with Vulcan Phalanx. I love when I brief engineers, by the way. They say, wait a minute, 25%. That's problematic. There is another problem with Vulcan Phalanx. The problem is it has to do with a law of physics. Now, I'm looking at my clock here, and it's 20 after 6 on a summer evening in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. No one wants to learn about physics, but I'm sorry, I'm a rocket scientist. This is what I do for a living. Love me or leave me. The law of physics says as follows. Now, hear me out. The law says like this: what goes up must come down. Turns out that law of physics is equally relevant in the Middle East. By us, there is typically arguing involved, and so it takes a wee bit longer. But eventually, that cloud of depleted uranium knives is going to fall to the ground on what once was your sidewalk. Now, imagine, if you will, that the powers that be have decided to protect Jackson Hole, Wyoming with Vulcan Phalanx. I don't know why. Maybe the folks out there in Montana are getting itchy. I don't know. But let's just assume they do. And you're lying in bed one night and you thought you heard a sound of, you think, no, not a problem. That's probably just Vulcan phalanx or maybe the dog, I don't know. And then you wake up in the morning and you want to pour yourself a cup of coffee, and for crying out loud, there's no milk. So you got to send your kid down the block to the 7-Eleven to get some milk. So your child opens the door and he walks out of and only yesterday was his sidewalk. Today is a huge pile of smoking wreckage, and he's trying to make his way through the burnt, depleted uranium. Forgot to tell you something. 1 out of every 10 shells is fired off by Vulcan phalanx does not explode in the sky. It falls down to the ground, waiting for your child to discover it. Now, believe you me, if they ever decide to protect your part of the world with Vulcan phalanx, and you got to go send your child to the 7-Eleven to get milk, you will send the child that you like the least. Baruch Hashem, we have 8 children, and there is a list on our fridge that if they ever do decide to protect Moreshet, where I'm speaking to you from, with Vulcan phalanx, which kid goes and gets the milk. And what surprised them the most, my children, was that we don't love them equally. But that's another story for another time. So the point being is that you cannot necessarily use a system that was designed to protect the forward operating base in Baghdad to protect a heavily populated urban areas. It doesn't work. Well, after we had thrown out the laser and after we had shot down Vulcan phalanx, there was really nothing left that could solve the problem of high volume rocket fire in urban areas other than Iron Dome. And that's not even true, because there were other systems out there that were also investigated and analyzed, and they were all disqualified for various reasons. They all had their Achilles heel. And truth be told, I had the merit of briefing one of the people who was actually on the committee who made the decision. And he's listening to my briefing and he looks at me. I got to this point in the briefing. He looks at me and says, "You make jokes." I said, "Moi?" He said, "Yeah, you make jokes." He said, "We knew exactly what a laser could do. We knew when it would work. We knew when it wouldn't work. We knew about the collateral damage in Vulcan phalanx, and we knew that it had performance issues. But Iron Dome was a PowerPoint presentation. Iron Dome was a couple of pieces of double-sided 8.5 by 11 paper. And yet we knew that Iron Dome was the only system out there that had any chance of working. And other than giving you everything you needed in order to build it, we gave you our trust. We gave you our trust because you had done things like this in the past, or you'd come in the past and done things that we didn't expect you to do. And we hope to God you'd be able to do it again. And you know, in 3.5 short years, he told me, you guys repaid our trust with a system that has changed the way Israelis live. Now, 3.5 years in the development of a system of the extent, the complexity of Iron Dome is insane. Typically, it takes about 10 years to develop a missile. A weapon system like Iron Dome, anywhere between 12 and 15 years. And during that time, the system undergoes so many different evolutions and metamorphoses. Iron Dome, 3.5 years. Why? Because when your backyard is on fire, you work really, really fast. Case in point, the vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. How long does it take to make a vaccine? Certainly doesn't take a year, but when you're in the throes of a global pandemic, you do things differently. Lo and behold, you have a vaccine that changes the it did until the Delta variant raised its ugly head. What is Iron Dome? Now, I have had on 2 different occasions, 2 U.S. congressmen voted in by a jury of their peers give me the following answer: say no more. I know what Iron Dome is. In fact, we're funding Iron Dome to the tune of, back then it was about $1 billion. Iron Dome is a dome that is made of iron. It's a city-sized dome, and the dome is rolled out to cover this. Sir, please say no more. Please say no more. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing the United States of America. And it turns out that if you say "sir" enough to a congressman, he will back down eventually. It's a law of biology, a law of psychology and physics. Now, what is Iron Dome? Now, instead of what I've realized is no one wants to see a PowerPoint presentation. Here's a part of this Iron Dome, and this is the laws of physics. What I want to do for you is give you a day in the life of Iron Dome. We start our days very, very early. Early in the morning, we're on a hilltop, and we in the state of Israel have a luxury that is not shared by very many other countries in the world. And this luxury is that we know pretty well where the next rocket is going to come from. And I will give you a hint: Gaza. Now, it's not as if everybody in Gaza don't like us, but a lot of folks that don't like us happen to live there. Statistically speaking, most of the stuff comes from Gaza, a little bit from South Lebanon, depending on the time of the year, but Gaza. So what we do is we aim all of our radars and stuff at Gaza, and we wait for them to fire off a rocket. Now, thank God the folks down there are very, very busy, and we don't have to wait long and get bored and make new startup companies and fire off a rocket. Got to fire off a rocket because we have to do other important things. As soon as the rocket breaks the horizon, because of the curvature of the Earth, the rocket has to break the horizon. We pick it up on our radar. Now, this is no trivial task, because some of the stuff they're shooting at us is really, really small. In fact, their weapon of choice, which is the 107 caliber rocket, it's only about 3 footballs long. And yet, because we have this science fiction radar, we pick this thing up at a huge distance. And as soon as we pick it up, we begin calculating. We're Israeli rocket scientists. We like doing that sort of stuff. We work on our algorithms. What are we calculating? We're trying to calculate where the bad boy is going to fall. Why? Because most of the stuff that they fire at us is unguided. It's what we call dumb rockets. It goes up, it goes down, it goes boom, and it goes down in the general direction in which it was fired. But because it's not guided, it just falls somewhere. And most of the time, in fact, statistically speaking, since we began calculating statistics about 10 years ago, about 75% of what's been fired at us, we don't even care about. Falls in places we don't even care about. There are pictures from the last flare-up of violence in May of rockets falling in the ocean. Some of these fall short in Gaza. In fact, recent studies have shown that about 90 Gazans were killed by rocket fire falling short in Gaza. Some of this stuff falls in the desert, my mother-in-law's house, places that you don't want to burn $100,000 interceptor to shoot it down. I say, if you want to shoot it there, shoot again, see if I care. I'm not gonna shoot again. I'm not gonna waste $100,000 trying to shoot it down. Now, how do we know where to engage and where not? When we lay down an Iron Dome battery, you have a startup menu, a configuration menu, as it were, and there's a map, and the computer says, where would you like to defend today, Mr. Israeli? And here, and here, and beep, enter. And from then on, the computer does the hard work. Now, if the computer determines that the bad boy is going to fall in an area that has been predefined as an area we have to defend, in Hebrew we call it defended area. If it's going to fall into a defended area, then we will engage. How do we engage? We fire off one of our interceptors. Interceptor, which really means missile, which really means guided rocket. We fire off our interceptor. Now, because we are extremely intelligent Israeli rocket scientists, not only do we know where the bad boy is, not only do we know where he's going, but we know how he's going to get there. And what we can do is we can find a point on that trajectory where it's the best place to shoot him down. So we fire off our interceptor and we finagle ourselves so that we're coming head on. We want to meet the bad guy right at that point. I always loved the way our Iron Dome performs these really aggressive turns. If you look at a picture that came out in the recent war, beautiful picture. It was actually taken from a jail in Gaza. I had nothing else to do. I'm going to take pictures. On the right side of the picture is the straight line. That's the rockets that are going up. And on the left side of the screen is all these convoluted like that. And that's our Iron Dome interceptors that are finagling themselves to get right in the way, right in the face of the bad guy. And he's coming this way. We're coming this way. We want to hit him right in the face. But we don't need to hit him in the face. Only need to get close. Why? Hit him in the face. That's kind of difficult. Costs a lot of money. Getting close, okay, fine. But in order for me to tell you why we need to get close, I need to tell you what a rocket. How do you make a rocket? Well, the simplest thing to do is to Google, how do I make a rocket? Now, I urge you, it turns out that if you write on your computer, how do I make a rocket? There are people on the other end that are listening, not only from the Chinese embassy, but there are other people that are listening out there. And I know this to be true because this has happened to your faithful servant, which is why I recommend that if you want to write something like that, that you write it on your mother-in-law's computer. It's really, really simple. If you want to make a rocket, all you got to do is start out with a bomb, First thing you do, Ari Sacher's name, rule of rocket science names, you got to change the name. Can't call it a bomb, you call it a warhead. And you take your warhead and you encase it in a tube that is made of stainless steel or aluminum. And at the end of the tube, you put this pointy looking thing at the end. And at the other end of the tube, you take a rocket motor. How do you make a rocket motor? Really, really simple. You take sugar and you take fertilizer or something else with a high phosphate content, and you stir it up, and then you pour it in, and then it into a mold, and boop, you have a rocket motor. You take your rocket motor and to use the rocket science term, up your rocket motor onto the bomb, and then you put it on a launcher, which is really a glorified paperclip. And then you fire off, you say the magic words, Allahu Akbar, fire off the bad guy. It goes up. That was not PC. It goes up and it goes down, but I've been fired at like 10,000 times, so leave me alone. And then it explodes. So that's what a rocket is. Now, it should be patently obvious to you guys that the most important part of the rocket, the most critical part of the rocket, is the warhead. And we got to prevent this warhead from hitting the target. Now, the problem is that we can't deflect the warhead off of its path, because we might be deflecting it off of path that it's a garbage dump onto a path that hits a kindergarten. So what we have to do is we have to prevent the warhead from hitting the ground. Well, doesn't what goes up must come down, right? It means we got to blow up the bad guy while he's still in the air. We got to blow up that warhead in mid-flight. Well, how do we blow up the warhead? Well, if he's got a warhead, then it seems only legit that we should have a warhead too. But whereas his warhead was probably purchased in a place with a name like Mustafa's House of Warheads, on sale today for half price. Our warhead was developed by Israeli rocket scientists, people with a quadruple digit IQ, people with extremely poor social skills. So you know these people. My wife married one of these people, and our warhead is covered with our special sauce. Can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you that our special sauce makes one spicy meatball. Now, he's coming in at no more Italian accent. He's coming in at about a half a mile a second, and we're coming up to meet him, not much slower. And we have on our interceptor system we call a proximity fuse, or we in the rocket science world call it a prox fuse. And our prox fuse has one job and one job alone, and that is to determine when our warhead is opposite his warhead. And at that particular instant, in that precise instant, our interceptor is programmed to shout in the language of interceptors, "May my soul die with the Philistines." We commit interceptor harakiri. We detonate our warhead. The special sauce flies through the air at hypersonic speeds. And yes, hypersonic sauce, another excellent name for a rock group. The hypersonic sauce flies through the air. It hits the metallic envelope. It penetrates. It enters the nucleus where it fertilizes the it enters the warhead, where from the sheer kinetic energy, 1/2 mv squared, it detonates bad guy's warhead, such that when you see an Iron Dome intercept and you see that puff of smoke, you're actually seeing two explosions in quick succession: the explosion of our warhead and the explosion of their warhead. And if we detonate our warhead a fraction of a second too early or too late, then we will miss the bad guy's warhead. We will hit perhaps hit the rocket itself. But as far as we're concerned, that's a miss. Now, to review, to recapitulate what it is that you need to do in order to intercept the bad guy, all you have to do is the following: pick up the bad guy in the radar at some ludicrous range, make sure that he's going to hit something of importance, fire off an interceptor, finagle ourselves so we're coming head on, pass the guy at a range that we can almost reach out and touch him. We have to detonate our warhead at a precise time. The warhead shards have to fly in the air, have to penetrate his warhead, and we have to blow up. If any one of those things does not happen, then we have missed our target. And yet we've successfully done every part of that in combat conditions about 4,000 times with a rate of success of greater than 90%. And you will forgive me for calling that kind of performance miraculous. Now, here is where I switch gears on you. I want to tell you a story. Oh, he's telling us a story. That's so nice. You always have to tell stories. Now, this story I actually received as a WhatsApp message in August of 2014. It was during the last part of Operation Protective Edge, a very similar operation to what we had before. These guys get angry every so often, and the rockets were flying, and Iron Dome shooting them down. And it was really Iron Dome's coming out party in August of 2014. And I got this WhatsApp message, and it was a real long one. One of these WhatsApp messages at the bottom, it says read more, which I typically do not read more. I typically say, oh, I got other things to do, but this was so interesting. I just continued reading it. And I think everybody on the core team of Iron Dome received this WhatsApp message. And the same story was actually found on multiple websites. And as this was 2014, a full 2 years before fake news was invented, the story has to be true. Now, the story was told by a person, that was also not PC. The story was told by a person who he claimed to be an officer in an Iron Dome battery. And he says, we were defending Tel Aviv in August of 2014, and someone in Gaza got a bee under his bonnet and fired off a rocket at Tel Aviv, Fajr 5, with about 170 kilo, 400 pounds of high explosive. 400 pounds of high explosives will take out an apartment building. It will put a crimp in your afternoon. And this was headed straight for the Azrieli Center. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Azrieli Center is a complex made up of 3 65-story skyscrapers. There's a circular one, a square one, and a triangular one. And in between these 3 65-story buildings is a shopping mall called the Azrieli Center, counterintuitively. And this is one of Israel's most highly traversed shopping malls. At any given time, there's more than 10,000 people there. Adjacent to the Azrieli Center is the train station called the Hashalom train station. Across the street from the Azrieli Center is a military base called the Kiryat, which at any given time, it's Israel's largest urban military base. And this bloody rocket is headed, boom, right towards that complex. Well, not a problem, because we have Iron Dome, world's best system for shooting down back, and fired off an interceptor, and it missed. Okay, not a problem. The flight time from northern Gaza to Tel Aviv is between 70 and 90 seconds, depending on the winds, and we had time to fire off another interceptor. I fired off another interceptor, and that missed too. Uh-oh, things are getting hot and hairy there. We still have time to fire off a third interceptor. We fired off the third interceptor, and that missed also. And there were 4 seconds left to go until impact. And the system automatically sent out a bulletin on the network to anybody who needed to know that there was going to be a high volume, a high casualty event in the Azrieli Center. And anybody who needed to know knew. The police, fire brigade, Magen David Adom, Zaka, Rahman al-Islam, anybody who needed to know knew. And then something happened. See, in Israel, in August, especially summer months, east winds come out of nowhere on a moment's notice. And these east winds are typically funneled through dry riverbeds, wadis in Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and they come through and they pack a punch. Well, on this particular day in August, one of these winds came through, and what it did was it essentially pushed the rocket from where it was going, and it pushed it into the sea, where it fell harmlessly. And when that happened, said the person who wrote the article, I stood up, I pumped my fist in the sky, and I shouted, Yesh Elokim, Yesh Elokim, there is a God, there is a God, end of story. Now here's where, again, I go for audience participation here. And what I want to know from you guys is how many people believe the story happened, and how many of you are, shall we say, skeptical. Now, show of hands. Come on, guys, show of hands here. How many people believe the story happened? Raise hands, raise hands. Oh, come on. You guys are non-believers. Okay, I'm looking at you there. How many people are skeptical? And people don't believe that the story happened? Show of hands, show of hands. Okay, fine. Well, there aren't enough hands out there for me to get good statistics, but typical statistics show, and I've given this talk a number of times, that about 80% of the people out there believe the story happened. Only about 20% are skeptical. And almost 100% of the clergy believe the story happened. I have had two rabbis who said, no, we're skeptical. One guy from Oro Valley in near Tucson, and who I actually spoke to when I was in Tucson a couple of months ago working on business on Iron Dome with Raytheon. And a couple of days ago from Bozeman, Montana, I don't know, a very, very skeptical rabbi. Everybody else, not skeptical. Okay, so that's the end of my talk. Are any questions? No, I'm just kidding. The story didn't happen. It couldn't happen. It's a bunch of hooey. Now, I'm sorry, there is no Christmas. Now, why does everybody wants to believe that it happened? Because everybody wants to see a miracle. It was a miracle. I saw the miracle. I saw it with my own eyes. And if I didn't see it, my brother Gus, he saw the miracle. It was miraculous. Now, the problem is that everybody wants to see a miracle. The problem is that we, how do I know that the story didn't happen? Why aren't you asking me this question? I'm looking for someone to ask in the chat. I know the story didn't happen because I'm an idiot. Let me explain. One day I had a meeting in Tel Aviv. I live in the north. I had a meeting in Tel Aviv, one of the hotels on the beach at Hayarkon Street. And one of Ari Sacher's rules, besides the defense name rules, is never bring your car into Tel Aviv. Because if you bring a car into Tel Aviv, either you'll die in a traffic jam of starvation, or you'll never find a parking space. What you do is you take a train. So I took a train, got off at the Hashalom train station. I got out to the platform on the street level, and I opened up my trusty Waze, which we Israelis always use, and Waze told me that to take a cab to the hotel would take me 45 minutes. 45 minutes, for crying out loud. I can walk it in half the time. So I started walking, and 45 minutes later, I got to where I was going, because it's way further than I thought it was. And it was 95 degrees and 167% humidity. By the time I got to my meeting, I was just drenched in sweat. But I knew that the distance from the Israeli Center to the sea was a lot greater than I thought it was. So I opened up Google Maps after I read the story, and 2 points. The distance between Israeli Center and the ocean is 4 kilometers, which is about 2.5 miles. In order for a wind to blow a rocket 4 kilometers in 4 seconds, that wind has to be blowing at the rate of kilometer a second, 3,600 kilometers an hour, 2,000 miles an hour. A 2,000 mile an hour wind doesn't happen very often. Our pilots out there will agree with me on that one. A 2,000 mile an hour wind will not only blow the rocket into the ocean, it will blow the Israeli Center into the ocean, along with the rest of the people in Tel Aviv, who will find themselves in the ocean to look at each other stoically and say, "Wala dudu zaya wachadruach." That was some wind, wasn't it? And then they'll get up, walk out of the ocean, dust off the water, and make another startup company. Now, everybody wants to see a miracle. Everybody wants to believe that that story happened. The problem is that after 2,000 years in exile, we've become kind of jaded as to the definition of a miracle. So allow me, Ari Sacher, rocket scientist, to give you a quick review on what a miracle is. Now, I have proven physically that there are 2 categories of miracles. And these categories, I name them actually based on the Jewish holiday, which characterizes these categories. The first category of miracles I call Passover miracles, Pesach miracles. These are miracles. Think back to Moses and Pharaoh and Egypt, and there's shock and there's awe and the outstretched hand and the fist, and there's blood, there's frogs, and there's lice. Lice, father of 8 children, not such a big miracle. And then there's God kills the firstborn, they all die. And then the Jews are running out, and then they hit the Red Sea, and God says, not a problem, parts the Red Sea, and the Jewish people go through, and here come the Egyptians, like this is not a problem, boom, out go the Jews. The Egyptians come in, and they're all drowned in the Red Sea. Wherever you look, there was godliness. Our sages say that the person of the most simple person at the Red Sea saw things that even the greatest prophets never saw. In Egypt, in Passover miracles, God took the law of physics and he said, not today. Another kind of miracle. And this is a miracle that I call Purim miracles. Purim, I know Purim was 5 months ago, and in COVID time, it's like 25 years ago, but bear with me here. Think back to the Purim story, the book of Esther. And before I continue, a quick question. How many people out there have won the lottery? We won the lottery? Grand prize, come on. No one here works for the IRS. Well, sometimes I get a person with his hand, a sheepish grin. Well, and how many people have won the lottery twice? That's a sure way not to get an answer. But just to make sure, I always ask my audience, how many people have won the lottery 3 times in 3 consecutive weeks? Nobody has ever had that happen to them, because if someone were to win the lottery 3 times in a row, he would, that next day, would be visited by a large contingent of police officers and folks from friendly folks from the IRS who wanted to understand the secret of his luck, because while mathematically possible, this is so improbable that it just doesn't happen. Well, I've reviewed the book of Esther, and what I have found is that if you look at the story of Purim, there are no less than 13 incidents that if one of these incidents didn't happen, then the entire story of Purim doesn't happen, the miracle doesn't happen, Haman gets his way, and we're carrying on this conversation in Persian. Just so happens the king gets drunk. Just so happens the queen decides not to come. Just so happens he listens to his buddy Fred, kills the queen. Just so happens out of all the people in the entire Persian Empire, he picks Esther. And it just so happens that her cousin, Uncle Mordecai, overhears people plotting to kill the king. Just so happens, just so happens, just so happens. And everything just so happens the way it's just supposed to happen, because at the end of the day, they kill Haman and the Jews are free to live another day. More startup companies. And if one of these things were not to happen, then everything doesn't happen. What are the chances that happening? None. But the problem is that there's in Purim, you cannot look, you cannot zoom in to any part of the Purim story and say, oh, there's God. And for this reason, God's name does not appear even once in the book of Esther. But you cannot zoom out and look at the entire story and not see God Almighty. I'll give you an example. Case in point, May of 1967. In May of 1967, what were Israelis doing? I'll tell you what we were doing. I wasn't we because I was in Philadelphia at the time, but in May of 1967, Israelis were digging mass graves. Digging mass graves because a very bellicose Gamal Abdel al-Nasser in Egypt had struck a deal with a very bellicose, equally bellicose Hafez al-Assad in Syria. The 2 countries had created a VISE. They called it the United Arab Republic, and the UAR had one goal and one goal alone. And this goal was to push the Jews into the sea. And we figured they're probably going to do it. And if they do it, it's going to be pretty messy. And in order to preempt the desecration of dead bodies, we say in Hebrew, we dug mass graves. In fact, the greatest yeshivas in Israel at the time, Ponevezh and Mir, they released their students, their rabbis, to go out and dig mass graves with everybody else. And that was May of 67. Fast forward by 1 month, June of 67, in less than 6 days, the Israeli army had defeated every single meaningful army in the Middle East. We won every single battle in that war. Now, how does that happen? Did it happen because they made every mistake in the book and we made every good decision in the book? Did it happen because their generals were less smart than our generals, or were our Mirage 3Cs better than their MiG-21s? Or did it happen that time and time again, God Almighty said, you guys are going to win this one, and you guys figure it out? I fast forward by 24 short years. This time I was in Israel, January of 1991. Our friends and neighbors in sovereign state of Iraq, owned and operated by Saddam Hussein and sons, they fired off from January until March 39 Scud-B guided missiles. The guided missile goes where it's aimed at. And each of these missiles had a warhead of a 1/2 ton of high explosives. A 1/2 ton of high explosives will take out a large portion of a city block. And these were aimed for the heart of Tel Aviv, our most heavily populated urban area. 39 missiles, 2 Israelis were killed as a direct result of rocket fire. Yes, some died of heart attacks. Others died because they told us that there was a chance of these missiles containing weapons of mass destruction. Every time we went into our sealed room, we put on our gas mask, and at the end of the gas mask, there's a little plastic rubber plug. And in order for the gas mask to work, you have to pull the plug. And some people, Rahman al-Islam, they went into these rooms and they locked the door, and they were in by themselves, and they forgot to take off the plug. and they suffocated. But 2 Israelis died as a direct result of rocket fire. One of them died because of an errant Patriot missile, which we had received from the US to shoot down these bad boys, went up and it went down and it took out an apartment building around a gun. Now, the same war, the different front in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia, the United States Army is asleep in their barracks, and the same Scud B slams into those barracks and kills on the spot 28 US servicemen. 97 are critically injured. How does this happen? 39 missiles, 2 Israelis, 1 missile, 28 American soldiers. Did this happen because the winds kept on coming and pushing the missiles off their path, or did it happen because when they're firing in Israel from Western Iraq and in H2 and H3, they didn't have time because US fighter bombers are buzzing them, but they did have time to set up and take a good shot in Saudi Arabia? Or did it happen because God said that you guys are going to be okay and you guys are not? Now, you don't know me. If you did, you would know that I consider myself one of the more rational people on earth. I don't go for the touchy-feely stories, doesn't do it for me. But I can tell you that I firmly believe that if it went out for a huge dollop of help from God, that 67 and 91 would have turned out completely differently. Iron Dome is probably the most complex system I have ever worked on. It isn't even a complex system. It's a complex system that's composed of other complex systems. You have this science fiction radar, which picks up these small projectiles at infinite distances. You have the special sauce and the proximity fuse, and the whole thing is ruled over by supercomputers. If one of these things doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't work. The whole thing breaks, to the point that were someone to come to me in the beginning and say, you know, Ari, Iron Dome, it's working, not working so well. It's only working about a 25% rate of success. I would have said, okay, I understand. I have some ideas. I would take a group of programmers. We go into a room, lock the door, and we come out after 7 days with a new software build, and we load that software and we would update. We would improve the performance from 25%. We double it to 50%. Our performance isn't 25%. It isn't 50%. It's 90% success. The miracle of Iron Dome is Iron Dome. The fact that the system works day in and day out, we don't even think about it anymore. That's the miracle of Iron Dome, not the one time it doesn't work and we need this wind to come out of nowhere, but every single time that it does work. Why does this happen? Why do people always want to look for that wind? And the answer is we're all seeking. Everybody's searching for godliness. And the problem is that most people are searching for godliness in all the wrong places. They're looking over there and the fire and the brimstone, and there's God. If you want to see God, you got to stop looking over there. You got to start looking over here. If you want to see God, stop looking for the whirlwind. If you want to see God, go outside, pick an apple off a tree, go watch the sunrise, hold your child or your grandchild in your arms, look in his eyes, learn with them a little bit of Torah. If you want to see God, that's God. You want to see God, you got to stop looking over there and start looking right over here. And I promise you that if you stop looking over there and you start looking over here, you will see things that will simply blow you away. Now I'm really finished. So what I'm going to do is, Rabbi, with your discretion.
Wow. First of all, wow. Fantastic. That was incredible. Thank you for such an incredible presentation on such a complex subject and making it so interesting and relevant and easy to digest. This was fantastic. Really appreciate it. We have quite a few questions that have come in on the chat, but I think we're a small enough, intimate enough group over here that if someone had a question that they posted on the chat, go on mic, go on video. We want to see your face if you're going to ask the question, and fire away. We'd love to get into a little bit of a discussion over here and see if some of the more complex questions that have been posted or some of the more complex questions that you guys have, Ari can possibly address for us. I'm sure he can. So I'm going to call your name if you post it on the chat, or just raise your hand if you'd like to ask the question. Andy Moskowitz, you've posted a couple of times. Try to condense.
Be concise, Andy.
Into one.
Be gentle.
Go off mute.
Andy, you're on mute.
Okay. Hi, Ari. Thank
How you
you for a
going?
very entertaining and informative presentation.
Thank you very much.
While you were talking, I was remembering back to the 80s, the Falklands War, and the way those French-bought Exocet missiles demolished several warships on the part of the British.
Yep.
And I was wondering, I'm always thinking about the American military. I'm an American. I was wondering what 100 modern versions of the Exocet could do to a U.S. aircraft carrier, and could it ward off such an attack? And if not, why are we building these $15 billion systems?
Oh, well, it's truth be told, I mean, to build any kind of missile defense system, Israel had a knee-jerk reaction. No, not 1 cent. Like the Air Force says, not a pound to air and ground. The Israeli army said, we're not going to spend any money in defense. Wars are not won using defensive system. Wars are won by taking the war to the enemy. The war is won by convincing the enemy that it's no longer worth his while, and that's used by imposing tremendous amounts of force on the enemy. That said, we learned that the Israeli homeland needs to be protected, and you cannot win a war on the other side of the border unless you have a quiet home front. And there is a need to protect the home front. Iron Dome was never intended to shoot down everything. I'll expand your question. Hezbollah has, according to what I read on the internet, which I know it's after 2016, so we got to be careful of what we read, but they have 150,000 rockets trained at us. We certainly don't have aren't going to shoot down 150,000 rockets. Multiply that by about $100,000 an interceptor. We're looking at $150 billion just to shoot down all the just for the interceptors. So no, we don't. Actually, $1.5 billion. I did the math incorrectly. $1.5 billion to shoot. Iron Dome was never intended to shoot down everything. Iron Dome was intended to shoot down leakers, stuff that leaked through. It was intended to keep the home front quiet enough so that the Israeli army could take the initiative. Without the initiative, we lose. Second Lebanon War, we lost the initiative, and we lost the Second Lebanon War. If we ever suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and 150,000 rockets are fired at us, then we will turn southern Lebanon into a parking lot. And I believe that the Lebanese are aware of that. A case in point, they haven't fired at us. And every second that they don't fire at us is because of our ability to make the only thing better than a war that we win is a war that we don't have to fight because of our deterrence. Iron Dome shoots down what it needs to shoot down, and that gives the Israeli army time to take the initiative and to staunch the rocket fire. That's what it was created to do. Can Iron Dome protect warships? Of course it can. In fact, one of the versions of Iron Dome is called Sea Dome. Sea Dome. Well, there you have it. And that's protecting warships now. That's recently installed on the new Israel SAR 6 corvettes. So Iron Dome is protecting it. And we will never allow the enemy to reach it, to continue firing rockets at us if it means that it's going to hit. Iron Dome will shoot down when it needs to shoot down, and if the flow is not staunched, we'll take it out. Iron Dome has prevented war. In 2014, for example, Iron Dome did not prevent war, but it gave the Israeli army time to go into Gaza when we wanted and how we wanted. November 2012, Iron Dome prevented a war. Iron Dome prevented a war just now in May, because Iron Dome was working so well. We didn't have to bring in soldiers. We could pick out, we could take care of Gaza from the air. Had the rocket fire continued, then we would have had to have gone in. Thank God for Iron Dome. So Iron Dome is not a be all and end all. You can't fight a war with a suit of armor, say, kick me as much as you want. I have the best suit of armor in the world. You might not lose that war, but you won't win that war. That's what Iron Dome does. Iron Dome is part.
Thank you very
of the
much for
defense
that
system.
fantastic question and that fantastic clear answer. Beautifully said. Okay, Saul Silverstein. Saul, are you on still? Would you like to ask your question? We would love to see your beautiful face. Saul, are you still on?
Tim Salazar. Wow.
Saul, I don't see you on. Okay. We had some other questions. Question that came in from, trying to see if the people that posted. Nathan, are you still on? Nathan Herzl.
Hey, it's me, YY.
YY, fire away.
I'm on video.
Come on, show the face.
Hey there, Ari, great presentation. Thank you so much. It was very, very
Thanks.
interesting. Two questions. The Tamir interceptor missile originally was, like you mentioned, about $100,000 a missile. I know that multiple times Rafael has been able to reduce the price of that rocket of the interceptor. Do you know how much it currently is standing at?
Yeah, in fact, you can actually find out on the internet. Once the U.S. Purchased 2 batteries of Iron Dome, everything the U.S. buys, the prices are available on the internet. I got very angry at a friend of mine who's he's a reporter for the Jerusalem Post, and he says Iron Dome missiles are on the order of magnitude of $40,000 to $60,000. They might be, but that's not what it says on the internet. If you look in the internet, the order of magnitude is about 160K. That's what the U.S. Is paying for, and we're pretty much buying it at the same price we buy it for. We have reached about as it's costs about as little as it's going to cost. We've reached all the scaling has gone in. The price is not going to drop anymore because these things cost money. You have small radar seekers on it. So the radar seeker of any similar interceptor costs about what our interceptor costs. Average price of an interceptor is 6 figures. So the fact that we're about 1/10 of that cost is pretty good. It ain't going lower, which means it's very, very critical that the system work well, because we're operating very, very close to that point that if we operated just a little bit less, then it wouldn't be worth anybody's while. But Baruch Hashem, thank God, we're doing good. It's well worth it. It's a good bang for the buck.
Did you have
Yeah,
a follow-up question?
Yes. Part one would essentially be, I know I've at least read that the radar coverage of each one of the radar systems, the ELM 2084s, have been expanded to cover larger territories. Obviously, that doesn't help with the amount of batteries that are needed to cover. But how much did the original radar cover, and how much has it improved over the past 10 years?
No, the MMR, the MMR coverage hasn't changed. The MMR coverage is what it always was. What they've done is sometimes they use a rotating MMR, the rotating radar, but the coverage hasn't changed. The radar's gotten better, the performance has gotten better, but the coverage hasn't changed. That's always remained the same. It's actually physics.
In this past war, we noticed that Hamas tried to, as opposed to spreading out its rockets, really concentrate as many rockets in the shortest time as possible. Over, I think, 200 per hour they did once. What is, if Hamas is kind of limited with their abilities, but Hezbollah is, like you had mentioned, over 1,000 times more powerful, and they have over 200,000 available rockets to shoot into Israel. How many? What's the max capability? Like, how many enemy rockets to a civilized area does it take to overwhelm a single battery?
You want me to give you that data? You want me to tell you where I keep the key to my house also? Let it just be said that Hamas said, we are swamping the system. Yeah, right. We could handle way more stuff than they threw at us without getting into numbers. What I can tell you is that it's mathematics. That they fired 4,000 missiles at us, and 75% we didn't care about. That left about 1,000 that we had to engage, and we shot down about 900 of it. So if you're 100 bad boys that are falling to the ground, and some of these bad boys have 17-kilo warheads. Some of these bad boys have 170-kilo warheads. It's going to do damage. People are going to get injured, and houses are going to be destroyed. But it's mathematics. You don't stand up and say, we have found a hole. They didn't find a hole to the system. Okay, they didn't find a hole to the system. They're not even close. Our job is to remain 6 to 7 steps ahead of the enemy, and so far we're keeping it up. So I wouldn't worry about it. Next question. Rabbi, I cannot hear you.
And fantastic questions. Why and great answer. I just wanted to recognize we have with us Senator Tim Salazar, Wyoming senator, who is joining us. He's a dear friend of Israel. He's fascinated by the Iron Dome. He's fascinated and deeply supportive of the American-Israel alliance. And so I just wanted to recognize Senator Salazar. Senator, would you like to ask a question or just briefly say hello?
Well, Rabbi, thank you so much. I so apologize for being late. I had an emergency come up, but I just wanted to express my deep love for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And it's just a great privilege to be with you today. And I don't want to disturb this presentation anymore, but thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, sir, for taking the time to give us this briefing on the Iron Dome. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you so much. Well, if I take this opportunity to thank you, along with the rest of the United States government, for supporting the state of Israel, specifically supporting the state of Israel, our missile defense, helping us protect ourselves. Your support has been critical. It's been literally life-saving, and I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
Our next question, Rana Lowy. Rana, are you on? Would you like to ask the question?
I just want to know what is the actual story of this missile that was headed to Tel Aviv that supposedly they kept missing on, but it ended up, like, what's the real story of that?
Yeah, I hate to say this, but it's like asking what happened to the Three Bears. The Three Bears is a nice story. So was that missile. It didn't happen. Truth be told, in May, I was taking a walk. I was walking the dog, and my friend sends me, "Here, you got to see this story. It just happened in Gaza." It was the exact same story, except this time it wasn't set in August of 2014. It was set in May of 2021. Never happened. There was that rocket was never fired. Story never happened. It's just a nice story.
Thank you for that. I see Larry posted a question. Larry, would you like to come on video and audio and ask your question directly? We'd love to see you.
Hi, I'm just going to be on, I'm going to unmute myself. So what happens when the Iron Dome missile explodes with the incoming rocket? What happens to the shards as they fall to Earth?
Right, the debris. You know, I say debris in Hebrew? Debris. No, sorry, debris, because we pronounce the S. You know why? Because we're Israelis. We do what we want. With the debris, well, if we know where the defended area is, where we can't let the rocket fall, we also know that we can't let debris fall in that area. So we try to intercept the bad guy outside of that predefined defended area, so that if there is debris, the debris will fall outside of that defended area. Sometimes the geometry doesn't allow us to intercept outside. We have to intercept over the defended area. But in that case, we try to intercept high enough so that any explosion doesn't hit the ground. It's slowed by air resistance when it hits the ground. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, with over 4,000 intercepts, not one person has been injured by Iron Dome. And if you ask what is the most important parameter of Iron Dome, I would say more important than performance is safety. You can't have a system that protects human lives that threatens human lives. We have baked safety into the system from day one. And if you don't bake safety into the system, you get things like what happened in Meron. And that's baking safety into the system is just one of the most critical parts of Iron Dome. Let's take, say, one or two more questions, because it's like 4:07 in the morning for yours truly here.
Yes, we have time for one or two more questions. If you have a question, please come on video, unmute yourself, and ask the question. We'd love to see you and hear from you. Any questions? Linda, Barry, Steve,
I
Gal,
promise I'll be gentle.
Bev,
Unless I decide not to.
Tati, please go. So, Marianne, Gabriella, please go ahead. Ask your question. We'd love to hear your questions. Linda, you ready?
No question, just thank you, thank you, thank you. Go to
You're
sleep.
welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Go
All
to Puffin.
right, Rabbi, I'll give it to you to wrap up.
Well, thank you once again to Ari. Let's put our hands together for such a fantastic presentation. It is such a joy to have had this opportunity to be able to listen to you and to learn from you. Please keep up your great work in terms of both supporting Israel and on the great work that you do. Once again, thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening. And we look forward to seeing you in person at our services very soon. Take care. Have a wonderful night. Thank you
And
for
I just want
joining
to
us.
say, I think the fact that you're a rocket scientist is pretty cool, but the fact that you have 8 kids is cooler. So really, kudos to that.
And 11 grandchildren.
Wow.
King Yerbu.
I mean,
Wow.
all the best. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye-bye.
night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If anyone would like to stick around and just continue the conversation, you're more than welcome to. Ari, thank you. So, what are our thoughts? Wasn't that incredible? that was just fascinating. So brilliant, so beautiful, so clear, easy to appreciate.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. That was so clear and interesting and funny.
Baba found it very entertaining. He laughed, him and Zalman, it was a competition who could laugh more.
Where did he grow up?
Absolutely
You know where he grew up?
hysterical. I mean, I've known throughout the years that I programmed, I knew literally hundreds of geeks, and most of them are totally not capable of human of speaking to other
Human
people,
interaction.
of human interaction, and to be so funny and so with it.
Yeah,
And at the
I
same
wasn't
time,
so excited about
brilliant.
all the mother-in-law jokes. That
Yes.
was,
I love those. Those were the best. Those were the best.
Do we know
Yeah.
where he
I was
grew up?
gonna ask him where
Larry,
actually.
I do not know where he grew up. He had mentioned it to me when I spoke to him over the phone, but I'm drawing a blank on it. I know that he did spend some time as part of his
He
you
said
know,
Philadelphia or
service
something.
country. He spent some time in the Gold Coast of Australia, but I don't remember where he grew up. Somewhere in America. Can't remember.
Very nice.
Pretty amazing, pretty amazing for the technology and the deterrence is.
Yeah, Rana, thank you for joining us from Israel. It's 4 a.m. by you. That was amazing that you joined us. We really appreciate having you.
It was sounded like such an interesting subject. I was like, I'm setting my alarm clock for this.
Oh, good for
How
him.
does one get the videotape?
Well, we were instructed by Ari not to share any video. He feels that it makes it more difficult for him to be as open as he was if video gets around. So we
Okay.
will honor that request.
Got it. Thank you. Good night.
Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
Tommy. Good night, Racy. Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank
Good
you. Great
night.
to see you all. Have a great night, Tamar.
Good night, Andy.
Much love to the grandbaby.
Good night,
Good night,
Jackson
Andy.
Hole.
Take care.
Which
Senator,
Gemara is
any
Night,
final,
Misty.
any final comments?
Rabbi Mendelson, it's again, I apologize, but I hope you'll keep me informed because I will do everything in my power to support you and our Jewish folks in Wyoming. And if anything I can do at the state level, please let me know. I am a friend of Israel. I'm a friend of the Jewish people, and I'm ready to serve. So please reach out if I can help you in any way.
Well, Senator, the next opportunity to help, thank you. My wife reminded me to say thank you. So first of all, thank you. And second of all, that was beautiful. Second of all, the next opportunity is in December. We always light the menorah together with the governor. We've been doing it with Governor Friedenthal, Governor Mead, and now with Governor Gordon. And it would be our great pleasure to have you join us for that celebration. It's a coming together of all different kinds of people celebrating the holiday of Hanukkah, which represents the menorah, represents freedom of religion, the opportunity to be able to spread light throughout the world. And we would love to have you join us for that this upcoming December. Invitations are typically go out in late November, early December. We'd love for you to join us for that.
It would be my great honor. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Good.
Anyone else? Any final comments?
Good night, Jackson Hole. Good night, Chaya Morris.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Take care. Bye-bye.